Welcome back to You're All Doomed, the podcast that dissects Friday the 13th into 13-minute chunks. I am Strip Monopoly champion Greg.
I highly doubt that, and I am Brian.
And this chunk picks up with Bill and Alice and Brenda in the midst of their Strip Monopoly game and ends with Steve Christie's Jeep stalling out in a thunderous downpour. So yeah, Alice and Bill and Brenda are hanging out with their Monopoly game, and specifically weed is mentioned for the first time in this series. So I think it's Brenda maybe says that this would be a lot more fun if they were smoking some dope.
Well, Officer Dorf alludes to
you're
being
right.
on
to them,
some kind of Colombian gold or
That's
something
true.
like
He
that.
does. He does accuse them of being into weed, but
we never actually see them partaking. But
Right.
now they're actually admitting that it's a possibility.
Yeah, and they hang around doing that for a few more minutes, and then we cut away back to the cabin where Kevin Bacon is plowing Marcy in the camp bed, just going to town. So it's the first major sex scene of this movie. We know that Barry and Claudette were interrupted before they could really get very far. So this is the first full blown immorality of premarital sex.
In our first set of bare ass cheeks.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, it's Kevin Bacon's, but hey, someone is.
Depends on your point of view.
Yeah,
Brian.
someone's happy to see it.
Oddly enough, the thing that jumped out at me the most is Marcy has a very strange bump on her right eyelid. It's not Christian Bale level weird, but it was like, oh, what's going on there?
Like something she needs to have addressed.
She might want to get that looked at.
Okay.
It's just in a very awkward spot on her eyelid. So yeah, she might want to have a dermatologist give that a look.
Can't say I was looking at the eyelid, but that's okay. They're in a bunk bed, and the reason why we find this out is because on the top bunk is dead Ned.
Ned's corpse.
So Ned did go investigate who that person was on the porch of the cabin, and apparently the conversation didn't go very well because Ned is very much dead.
He got his throat slit.
Yeah, laying peacefully on the top bunk directly above the banging Kevin Bacon and Marcy.
Yeah, Ned's remains are kind of hidden by a large duffel bag, but it stretches credibility a bit that Kevin Bacon and Marcy didn't notice something on the top bunk when they came in to the cabin, because it's not like the top bunk is particularly high.
Right.
It's not in a shadowed alcove or anything, and the candle that Kevin Bacon lit was pretty bright, so I feel like they would have seen an arm or a leg or something, but okay, they were too distracted by wanting to get their clothes off.
Yeah, like maybe the way the body was positioned, it just looked like lumpy sheets or something, and they weren't really expecting to see anyone up there anyway, so they didn't look. But what I liked about this scene was that when the camera is panning away from Kevin and Bacon and Marcy, you don't really know what the destination is going to be at the end of that camera move. I was fully expecting to see the killer, on the top bunk or something, just waiting to pounce, right? Like trying not to giggle and sneaking a peek of the action below. But I definitely was not expecting to see dead Ned because we didn't really know what had happened to Ned. We saw him kind of pondering the idea of going to investigate this person in the cabin, but that was it. So I thought that was a nice little reveal.
Yeah, this was kind of our first surprise. It was nicely handled. So we can say farewell at last to Ned Rubenstein via throat slashing. So far the killer has shown quite a propensity for going after people's throats. Ned was played by Mark Nelson, and he went on to do quite a bit of TV. I noticed he had a recurring stint on the show Spin City.
Yep.
Didn't notice any other major roles, but I don't know if you uncovered anything in your research.
I tried to stay away from it as much as possible. I was just thankful to see Ned finally gone. I think it would have been funny if he had if he had been disposed of in a way that was more appropriate to Ned. Like an arrow in the eye, or
An ironic punishment for his behavior.
yeah, like he was wearing a Humphrey Bogart mask or something when
Scalped.
his head got ripped off.
Yeah. Humphrey Bogart mask.
Or he was drowned.
Oh, that Ned. He's
he's screaming in the lake, and everyone's like, "No, fuck you. We're not gonna go get you again." But yeah, I mean, it was fine. It was interesting choice that for a movie that's trying to be shocking, you actually the shock for this one isn't the killing itself, but the reveal that the fact that he has been killed.
That he's already dead.
So I thought that was kind of a neat choice.
Mm-hmm. In terms of Mr. Nelson's performance, I'd be kind of curious to know. I'm guessing that it was a lot of it was left to improv on the actors' parts. That his direction was probably just like, okay, Ned is the prankster. He's sort of the loner, the misunderstood geek kind of character.
Bring your own personality.
Personality to it. In which case, he went all in. I give him credit for really giving it his all. I as you, I find the character so distasteful that I might hold it against Mark Nelson unfairly. He was simply doing his job.
Yeah.
But that's the last we'll see of him. We take a brief detour back to the main cabin to check in on the strip monopoly, which does not seem to have advanced very far.
Nope.
But then we're back into the cabin again for Kevin Bacon and Marcy finishing up after their roll in the hay.
Getting a slab of bacon.
Making some bacon.
Yeah, Marcy has to go to the bathroom, which has got to suck when you're at camp because it's pouring rain and there's no bathroom in the cabin itself. So she's got to hike it across, the campgrounds to
it's
get
probably
to this
muddy
bathroom.
and cold, and that always annoyed me when I would go to summer camp, was how far away the bathrooms were, and let alone having to share the bathroom space with a bunch of other campers. But
when so Marcy leaves to go to the bathroom and leaves Kevin Bacon. I mean, he thinks he's alone in the cabin, and he decides to have a post-coital joint as he's laying in the bottom bunk, reflecting on his accomplishments, and
wearing a sleeveless T-shirt that kind of looks like Bruce Willis's at the end of Die Hard.
Yeah,
it's that same kind of muddy green color that he got from crawling through all the air ducts.
But he feels a drip on his head, and he's not really alarmed at first because it is pouring rain and he's in this old rundown cabin, but he is kind of curious, and he kind of like wipes his forehead and looks at it, and turns out it's not water.
Yeah, lifts his head slightly to get a closer look, but sees that it's blood and looks up, and then boom.
Yep. Yeah, there's like a hand that reaches out from underneath the bottom of the bed, which is really fucking creepy, because they've been there the whole time, but they
probably like, oh, the bed keeps crushing me under you guys, you gotta finish.
And so the hand reaches up and grabs kind of like just grabs his forehead and like pulls his head back so his neck is exposed, and all of a sudden you see this like arrow come flying through his throat, or jabbed through his throat, and dispatches of Mr. Kevin Bacon.
Yeah, the arrow pokes through his neck from the back, and gouts of blood pour out from this wound as Kevin Bacon is choking on his own bodily fluid. That's some gruesome stuff. That's a good one.
So before we get to go into more detail about the actual kill, are we led to believe that Kevin Bacon and Marcy ended up in the same cabin where Ned saw the person on the porch? Because if Ned's dead body is in here, then that means that's probably where the killing took place.
Yes, my impression of that is that the killer was lurking in the door of the cabin that is shared by Ned, Marcy, and Kevin Bacon. Ned went into his own cabin for a closer look at who was in there, and then Marcy and Kevin Bacon went back to their cabin, which is the same cabin.
I see. Okay.
And so they had all their stuff in there, and it was probably Ned's duffel bag that was concealing his body. And
I wasn't sure if they just went into like a random cabin to bang, but no, it makes sense that they were probably all sharing the same one, because then Bill and Brenda and Alice are in the other one.
Yeah.
Okay.
We do see that the killer is wearing a plaid shirt.
Yep.
We get a very good look at the killer's arm. And again, it's a very strong, powerful-looking arm that tilts Kevin Bacon's head back for his demise. So as for the kill itself, I would argue that this is the most important kill of the entire series. And I say that because it's so gruesome and so shocking that it put this movie on the map. I think this is the kill. If this kill had not been in this movie, in this form, if he'd been strangled or his throat had been slashed or something, this would be just another forgettable slasher flick that rips off Halloween. But the effort that Tom Savini and Tassos Stavrakis put into this kill in particular made people sit up and pay attention to this movie. And everything that comes after or spawns from this movie can be credited to the success of this special effect.
Yeah, because of, forgive the pun, but because of the execution of it. When you really think about, like we've seen, in documentaries and behind the scenes clips about how this trick was actually pulled off. It's really it's simple, but it's quite complicated when you think about how you would have had to think it through to get to that point. When they actually do it, you're like, oh, of course that's what they did. But to actually think about, well, if we wanted to pull off a kill like this where someone gets a knife through the throat or an arrow through the throat, how would we do this? And they thought this through, and it's really creative, and it's really effective. I mean, even for something that's over 30 years old, it's really like it's an impressive kill.
It looks pretty great.
Yeah.
I mean, viewing it in this context where we're scrutinizing the movie in smaller chunks, if you really look closely, it's a little hanky.
Sure, yeah,
but
like the angles are a little weird,
and the fake neck looks a little puffy and stuff. But there's no criticism implied in that statement. I mean, the way the movie plays out naturally, you are absolutely convinced you're seeing an arrow going through somebody's neck. And the little gout of blood at the end reportedly was a little bit of an accident. There was some blockage in the blood tube, and I believe it was Tassos Stavrakis had to exhale a little more forcefully to get the blood to come out, and he overestimated the necessary pressure, and so it shot out faster and was just this wonderfully horrendous fountain that really just
Right.
like it is fantastic.
I still think it would be a more appropriate kill for Ned, just because there's an arrow.
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't think they had started to think through the irony of kills yet. It was just dispatching people.
Yeah, we
got to
get this movie done. Let's.
Yeah.
Yep.
But these days there would definitely be some thematic element to the way each of them were killed. If someone was afraid of heights, they'd be thrown off a building, or that type of thing. But no, I love this scene, and it happens. Like there's enough time that passes that it's suspenseful, but it happens quickly enough that you don't have time to figure out what's going to happen next. And so it's like, oh shit, there's blood on his forehead, and then like before you even have time to really like comprehend that, it's like, Gah! There's a arrow coming through the throat, and I think that's pretty great. There's no they're not wasting any time.
Yep.
Because he would have reacted. He probably had 1 second to realize that it was blood, and then the next second he'd probably jump up and like want to figure out what was going on, because I think he even sees like a blood stain on the mattress above him, which I feel like they would have noticed before. Did I imagine that?
I don't remember.
Okay, maybe I didn't see that, but I feel like there was.
If it was seeping through, you would think it would have had to be visible.
Maybe I just connected the dots and thought it was there, but yeah, it's just done really well. I like it.
I think it's almost inconceivable that Marcy and Kevin Bacon didn't see someone lurking under the bunk bed.
Right. I mean, so now we figured out that there's someone underneath the bed and above it, and they haven't picked up on either of those.
I mean, okay, fine.
Yeah.
But we say farewell to Jack Morand.
I think it's the first time we've actually mentioned his character's name.
Wait, he has a character name? Yeah, played by Kevin Bacon.
Yeah,
who we're gonna pause and talk about a little bit, because we've been making lots of Kevin Bacon jokes and stuff, but boy, I love this guy.
He's awesome. Depending on where you look, he actually has two different character names.
Oh, really?
I also found Jack Burrell, They never mention his last name in the movie itself,
Right.
so I don't know if there's any concrete evidence of which one is correct. But it seems like Moran tends to be the more accepted version. But at some point, Burrell was an option, so I don't know if maybe that was what his name was in the script, and then they changed it
So
in the credits. But
what's canon for what's Friday the 13th?
I don't know.
Canon?
He's just a mystery.
Huh.
But speaking of the part that we do know is fact, that his name is Jack. Kevin Bacon is apparently attracted to roles where he's playing a character named Jack because he's done it 6 times.
No way.
Yeah. So he was Jack in A Few Good Men, Frost Nixon, obviously Friday the 13th. Your favorite movie, My Dog Skip.
Oh.
Apollo 13 and Quicksilver, all characters named Jack.
Wow.
So he's
racking up the jacks.
He's drawn to those. If you want Kevin Bacon in a movie, just call the character Jack.
Yeah, boy, he's great. He's always fun to see pop up and stuff. I even love the fact that he appears for 3 seconds in Planes, Trains, and Automobiles, chasing Steve Martin down the street, racing for a taxi cab.
I bet his name was Jack there too.
Yeah. So, I mean, what's your favorite thing that Kevin Bacon has gone on to? I mean, there's so many things to list, but which ones are the highlights for you?
You mean other than My Dog Skip?
I assumed that was number one.
I mean, I think this role is great in retrospect. Obviously, whenever I saw this movie for the first time, I don't think I ever was like, "Oh my God, it's Kevin Bacon." Maybe I did, but as far as the other work that he's done, I mean, he's just always solid.
Mm-hmm.
He's just a great. He's a little weird. He's a little creepy, but he always comes off as like a great character in the movie. And like, sometimes he's playing like a creepier guy, or sometimes he's playing like a nice guy, but he can pull it off.
I agree. He I can't say he steals scenes. He beautifully supports scenes.
Yeah.
Even if he's not the star. He's always believable. He always commands the performance perfectly. One of my favorite things that he's done is Tremors. It's dopey. And I know you don't necessarily agree, but
No, I've come around in recent years, but
it's a fun movie anyway, and I feel like his performance as Val really elevates it quite a bit. But I also I think he was pretty kick-ass as the villain in X-Men First Class. It was fun to see him be such a despicable bad guy. I hadn't seen him in anything for a little while, and when he showed up in that as such a menacing character, I'm like, damn, this guy, he's always great. And then, of course, there's the Kevin Bacon game, 6 Degrees of Kevin Bacon, which I remember we played to kill time before a concert years ago.
Yeah, we did.
My Kevin Bacon number is 3.
How is that?
Well, I know a guy who was in Not Another Teen Movie with Paul Gleason, and Paul Gleason was in She's Having a Baby with Kevin Bacon. So while I have not personally been in any movies, I at least am that close. So I was pretty excited to see that my Kevin Bacon number was 3.
That is pretty cool. Kevin Bacon also reprised the role of Jack Moran / Burrell in a DirecTV commercial fairly recently.
There was like a round table of Kevin Bacon characters or something.
Yeah,
right?
and one of them had an arrow coming through his throat, and I just remember thinking, "Wow, that's awesome!" Because I've always wondered, because you get these actors that go on to be big stars, and they often tend to ignore the early credits that they had, and but it was nice to kind of see him embrace it and say like, oh no, that's definitely one of the characters I played, and let's call it out and have some fun with it. So I thought that was a cool nod.
That's great. He hasn't popped up in a lot of documentaries about these movies that I've seen. So
yeah.
I always wondered if maybe he was distancing himself, but it's good to see him kind of.
Yeah, I mean, there's nothing to be ashamed about with this movie.
Oh.
I mean, it's I think he does a good job, and he plays a pretty iconic role because of the way that he's killed. And if there was a highlight reel of the all the best kills of the Friday the 13th movies, I guarantee this one's in it every time. So there's nothing for him to be ashamed of. It's not like it's a piece of shit movie that
Not at all.
he wants to brush under the rug.
So then we cut away to Marcy on her hike to the bathroom in the dark, in the storm, and she goes to have a little bit of a pee.
I would argue she's taken a dump.
That may be.
Yeah, I don't know. I don't have any evidence to necessarily support that, but that's just what I like to think.
Whatever floats your boat, man. You do you.
But while she's sitting there taking a dump, she reads some graffiti on the stall wall that says 40 yards to the outhouse by Will E. Make It. And she kind of chuckles at it. She's like, yeah.
I wondered, like, do we actually see that graffiti written there?
I don't think so. No, we see her kind of looking at the wall and she reads something out loud.
That feels to me like the actress doing improv again.
Very well could be.
That, or somebody maybe making that up on the spot and telling her to say that. But it just, that's an odd thing for a young woman who is basking in post-coital glow, perhaps dropping a deuce, to say out loud to herself in the bathroom stall.
And it's also, I mean, I realize it's a kids camp, but it seems even juvenile for kids to write on the wall.
Yeah.
Like, if I feel like if a kid's going to write graffiti, they're going to write something pretty dirty.
Like ass. Or,
boobs.
Yeah, right.
But yeah, it just, 40 yards to the outhouse by Will E. Make It is, it's just not even funny for a 5-year-old. But she seems to like it.
She tickled her funny bone for sure. Well, after voiding herself, she then heads over to the sink and has to fiddle around a little bit to get the water to run. There's some bathroom business with getting the pipes to work properly. But she's also talking to herself in the mirror quite a bit and doing. I can't tell if it's supposed to be Katharine Hepburn.
It is Katharine Hepburn.
Okay.
I mean, I'm famous for my Katharine Hepburn impressions. So.
The old poop?
So she looks in the mirror and she goes, "Why, when I looked into that mirror, I knew I'd always be ugly. I said, Lizzie, you'll always be plain." And again, for an audience of 0, she's doing an impression, a very bizarre impression that I had to look up and found out that it was Katharine Hepburn from 1956, The Rainmaker. The movie, it's about a middle-aged woman who falls for a con man who comes to town claiming that he can make it rain, which actually sounds like a pretty cool movie. I don't understand the context of the quote, but at least, we can say, okay, it's a perfectly fine Katharine Hepburn impression. And at least there's some context to why she's saying it, because she's talking about someone who's looking in a mirror and she happens to be looking in a mirror. So, okay, fine. It makes infinitely more sense than Ned's out of nowhere Humphrey Bogart impression. But again, it's just back to what you were saying. I just feel like a lot of these actors were just given free rein to just throw in anything they can. And I feel like a lot of these actors are just trying to show off their chops. Like, hey, I'm not just, the goofball. I can also do a great Humphrey Bogart impression, or I can also do a great Katharine Hepburn, and I can also make whatever the Rocky Road reference is.
Yeah, that with that, in conjunction with her Rocky Road comment from earlier, I can't decide if I think the character fancies herself an actress or if the actress playing this character is showing her acting range by impersonating some other famous performances of the past. It's a weird bit of business that I just kind of can't really wrap my head around.
And like, it's something they could have established too. Like if they told us early on that she wanted to be a stage actor or something, then her doing all these accents and performances would make sense. And you would just kind of say, okay, that's her being her. But we don't know what her end goal is with this. Is who is she trying to impress? The people watching the movie, or is she trying to, make herself feel better by doing these things? There're just a lot of weird choices that just end up coming off as random.
Yeah, and I wonder what the direction was. Like, okay, we're going to have you standing in front of the sink for a few minutes before the next big event, so just fill the time. Or did they tell her, Marcy is a drama student, and so here's some old-timey Hollywood dialogue for you to spout. We know you do a really good Hepburn impression, so
right.
Fill some time doing this or what.
But yeah, probably something she was doing on the set, and they're like, oh, do that.
Do that. But it all it does for me is in conjunction with her Bloodstorm nightmare description, it pretty much convinces me that Marcy's a little bit of a kook.
Oh yeah, big time.
She sets me ill at ease with the way that she's always talking to herself or making these random statements.
So after Marcy's done, fixing the sink and washing her hands and doing her Katharine Hepburn impression, she hears something in the outhouse, and she's not sure if it's Jack or Ned. Turns out it's not either of them. She opens the door to the showers, and this was probably just my overactive imagination, but when she opens the door, there's a lamp hanging from the ceiling, and because of the lighting, it almost looked like someone standing there wearing a hat of some sort, like a rain hat. And so for a very brief second, when the door opens, all you see, because it's a very dark room, and all you see is kind of the outline of this lamp head that's hanging from the ceiling, and it was like, ooh, it's a hat, or it's a head or something, and then
someone's there.
Yeah, and you quickly realize that it's not. So I don't know if that was intentional, but I thought that was kind of neat. And it turns out it was just the lamp, but she, when she goes in there, she's says something like, "Oh, I was just imagining things," and but then she turns around, and turns out she wasn't imagining things.
And never will again.
Right. And that's because her head just got split in two by an axe.
Yeah, with one of the greatest kill sound effects. I mean,
it's fantastic. Yeah.
Just buries an axe in her face.
Do we think that's Steve's axe?
Oh.
I'm not suggesting
we've
that
established
it's Steve.
No, but we've established there is an axe on the campground.
Right.
So
yeah.
probably it is.
Okay, because the arrow from Kevin Bacon makes sense. They probably got it from the archery range. But then the axe. I'm just making sure that all these weapons are
if
something
you
that were
introduce a gun
readily
in
available.
Act 1, you better pull it out in Act 3.
Exactly.
Okay. It's a weirdly edited death. When she turns around and obviously sees that she's about to be murdered, she stands there paralyzed, screaming. It cuts away and then cuts back to the axe being in her face. We don't actually see the impact, which understandably, but it's a little bit of a choppy edit by necessity. I can't fault them for it, but it slightly undermines the kill for me. But the effect of the kill once the axe is in her face is so great.
Yeah, it's great.
And so that sound effect is so horrible that it's pretty killer.
But once again, I mean, we talked about this with one of the kills, getting stabbed in the gut, and about how we would, retaliate with something like that, or respond to something like that. And I feel like there's no reaction that Marcy has where she even kind of attempts to defend herself. She turns around and then suddenly there's an axe ahead, and I feel like there's no flinch or anything.
She doesn't duck.
Yeah.
She doesn't try.
And I don't know how much time. I mean, the axe could have already been, wielded back, and it was, heading to her head by the time she turned around. But there's just not. I feel like so far there haven't been any defensive reactions to what's been going on. It's just startled, killed, and then there's no. There's no attempt to fight back.
So we say farewell to Marcy Standler via axe to the face. She was played by an actress named Janine Taylor. She had been a stage actor and perhaps went on to do some more of that kind of work. I see some indication that she then moved on to a career in marketing, corporate marketing. But I didn't really find much about her. I don't know if you were able to dig anything up.
Other than the fact that she's good at repairing sinks, but that's more her character than. But maybe that's a trade that she brought over
her dad
from
was
real
a plumber,
life.
and
Yeah,
so
it's possible. But no, I wasn't able to find much either.
So we move back into the main cabin where the strip Monopoly game has, in fact, progressed quite a bit. We're starting to see some skin on these kids as the properties are getting bought up.
Their game is interrupted though by the door being blown open by the wind, which is an old tired and
hoary
true
old cliche of
Yeah.
horror movies and storms and horror movies.
Yeah, I don't understand why doors don't latch shut in horror movies, but apparently it's just something that happens on a regular basis. So the door blows open and they all kind of freak out, but it oddly kind of puts an end to the game almost immediately. Like once the door blows open, it's like, well, just close it and
Close the
resume the
door.
game.
Yeah, unless I mean, I didn't get the sense that the table was disturbed by the wind and that they lost their place or their money.
Right.
Again, why are they using
Yeah, I mean,
money
like
if
there
they're
was a
playing
little bit of a
Strip
mess. Like I think they were like had to straighten up a few things, but there was nothing that was, that implied that the game was ruined and they just had to call it a night. But yeah, Brenda decides that it's time to leave Bill and Alice alone. So I don't know, maybe that was just her excuse to, leave the two of them alone. If the whole idea of the strip monopoly was to get Bill and Alice together, then maybe she saw this as her window to be like, all right, well, you guys have fun. I'll see you later.
I find it interesting that Brenda, she is not doing well in the game because she's already down to her bra and panties, and to head back to her cabin in a downpour, she simply throws on a green rain slicker. She doesn't
Right,
bother to
yep.
put the rest of her clothes back on.
Yep.
I mean, maybe she figures I'm going to bed soon anyway. I may as well just stay in my undies. But it was okay.
Yep.
So yeah, shirtless Bill and Alice are left to tidy up after the strip monopoly game and spend a little time together. And then we cut away to a diner.
Very nice looking diner. It's
Very nice
pouring
looking
rain,
diner.
absolutely pouring. So Steve's, premonition about the storm coming, and Kevin Bacon claiming that it was going to, fly down the valley like a son of a gun. They were right. It's a badass storm, and so Steve Christie is, wrapping up a meal and having one of the most uncomfortable flirtations with Sandy the waitress.
Who I'm pretty sure is Dustin Hoffman from Tootsie. Very masculine woman.
She's a lovely woman.
Oh yeah, I'm sure she's
yeah.
delightful. This section of the movie, they start to stretch out some dead space a little bit. They linger on the establishing shot of this diner for longer than I would have expected, and they continue to do that within this sequence in particular. But throughout the rest of the movie, they just establish the hell out of stuff, and it starts to slow things down a little bit. But yeah, his interaction with this waitress is quite cordial. They obviously know each other well. He must eat there a lot and have been, if he grew up there, as we suspect, he's probably known her for a long time. But she seems to be a little bit into Steve.
Yeah, I would say that. She, when Steve asks how much he owes her for the meal, she says, just a night on the town, sweetie, which is not charming in any way at all. I would be horrified if that woman said that to me. And his reaction is polite. Let's just say he just kind of laughs it off and goes, "Oh, you're you silly you." No, seriously, what do I owe you?
But it's the nicest he's been to anybody in this movie yet.
That's true. Yeah, he's not yelling at her to like hurry up and get him the fucking check.
Yeah,
and then paint the boathouse while you're at it.
Right. This is the warmest interaction he's had so far. So he obviously has some level of fondness for her.
So what do you think he ate? Because his bill was $2.25. Now, granted, this is 1979, 80, depending on who you ask, but that's a pretty cheap bill. So what do you think a Steve Christie orders at a diner?
I mean, I can't imagine he had more than a sandwich. I mean, if he's trying to save every penny to invest in the archery range, he's probably eating the bare minimum. He's a pretty lean guy, so
Yeah.
it looks like he's probably watching his weight or, likes to stay fit. So maybe he just had a small salad and a glass of water or something.
I was thinking like a tuna melt and a cup of coffee.
Yeah.
And then, Sandy maybe comped him the coffee. It's just kind of like you were saying, it just kind of establishes where Steve has been all this time. And I don't think we really need to know that he was at a diner because we don't know where he was between him leaving the camp and now being at the diner. So why is it important for us to know, why couldn't we just, cut to him a little bit later?
Yeah, I mean, I think this may be meant to definitively clear him from being a suspect, despite the fact that he drives a Jeep and wears a plaid shirt.
Just saying, look, he's nowhere near the camp.
He's been here the whole time or for a long period of time, and he's no way involved with what's happening back at the camp.
But is it too soon to reveal that if they're trying to misdirect us?
I think no, because I think that this is meant to take him off the board.
Eliminate at least one suspect.
Yeah.
Okay.
Like, you may have thought he was weird and creepy, but in fact, no, he's fine.
Because
Now
we
let's-
haven't seen the busboy since the diner.
Exactly.
Okay.
Right.
One more question about the diner scene. What do you think is bigger, Steve's raincoat or Sandy's glasses?
um, yeah, that is quite a raincoat.
He's definitely staying dry.
He's definitely staying dry. I kind of found myself admiring that raincoat.
It's impressive.
Yeah, and he's equipped himself for the wilderness.
He is
with that
prepared.
bad boy.
Yes.
And her glasses are probably made of bulletproof material, like the windows on the presidential limousine. So she's big on eye protection.
This is the one and only time that we see Sandy the waitress, but she was played by Sally Ann Golden, and she died 2 years after the movie came out.
Oh, for heaven's sakes.
So she was actually in her later years when
wow.
she was filming this, but she doesn't have a whole lot of screen credits to this. So I don't know if she was just maybe friends with someone that was filming the movie, or just a local from town. Maybe she possibly even worked at that real diner. But she's perfectly fine. She's a lovely woman, but this exchange between him and or her and Steve is just a little uncomfortable.
There's a lot of unnecessary flirtation in
Yeah.
this movie. I don't get what they're going for with that. But Steve packs up and begins his journey back to camp. He passes a road sign that shows that Crystal Lake is 12 miles away, and there's also a sign for Tomahawk Lake.
Yeah.
Which I think would make a kick-ass spin-off from this movie if there's like a whole other thing going on at Tomahawk Lake.
Yeah, because it's 25 miles away, and so it's close enough that if let's say that the authorities just said, that's it, we're shutting down Camp Crystal Lake, there's no way we can do this. Well, let's just shift operations over to Tomahawk Lake,
Right.
including the killer.
Right.
Why not just shift over there? But yeah, that was an interesting little thing. We don't really hear anything about it again.
Tomahawk Lake is real. It is an actual lake in New Jersey, and there's also a Tomahawk Lake water park, which I'm not 100% sure is still in operation because their website looks so outdated that I'm guessing it hasn't been changed in the last 10 years, if not more. But for all I know, people are still having fun at the Tomahawk Lake water park every summer.
Let's hope so. Let's hope the water's not tainted.
So we cut back to the camp where Brenda is preparing to go to bed for the evening, and she's in the exact same outhouse bathroom that Marcy was in earlier, and winds up brushing her teeth at exactly the same sink, in fact.
Yeah, she notices that the shower door is open, and that creeps her out, and I just don't feel like that's something that would affect me in any way. If I walked into a bathroom and there was a stall door open or closed, that's not something I would really respond to. It'd be different if I saw feet coming out from underneath one of the stalls and I didn't know who it was, but she thinks it's a little strange, but in her defense, she does decide not to investigate. She just, kind of acknowledges like, that's something seems a little bit off, but not off enough that I'm going to go check it out. So good night.
And as she's brushing her teeth, we cut to a shot of the shower stall, and a hand pushes the curtain aside very, very slightly, which was another moment that I had forgotten all about but found really creepy.
Yeah.
That's, that again, like being watched in the woods without knowing it, being watched by someone in the bathroom, in a dark bathroom, is super creepy.
So did the killer dispatch of Marcy and then just decide that they were going to just keep hanging out in the outhouse? Because there's not going to be a lot of traction in there, I would imagine, for the rest of the night. So I don't know, or like, is the killer waiting in there till the rain lets up or something? But it's just kind of strange that they're still in there.
Yeah, like they assume everyone has to come into the bathroom at some point that evening.
Yep.
But Brenda finishes brushing her teeth and looks again, and the curtain is pulled back more fully, and there's clearly no one standing there. So in the moment that Brenda was finishing brushing up her teeth, the killer has managed to sneak out of the bathroom.
Oh, creepy.
Unseen, which I found super creepy.
I didn't really pick up on that.
Yeah, that was some pretty chilling stuff.
Okay, so then I kind of see her reaction as a little bit more understandable, where she saw something differently than she did before, where the curtain had been pulled back a little bit more than she thought. But yeah, the idea that they were able, and again, we don't really have a good geographic layout of how this outhouse is laid out, so we don't know how difficult it would be to sneak out, but there's got to be only one entrance to it. because Marcy and Brenda both walked in the same way.
Right.
So I don't know if the killer just went to a different hiding place within the outhouse or what, but that's a pretty creepy thing that I didn't really pick up on.
Then we cut back out to outside the grounds of the camp, where it appears that Steve Christie's Jeep and trailer has stalled in the downpour. So we get a lengthy shot of the Jeep sitting there. Presumably he's inside trying to turn the engine over or something. But that's where we leave this episode. If you've got any other things to add.
No, I don't.
So for the deaths in this chunk, we have the confirmation of Ned's demise.
Poor Ned.
Poor Ned, farewell. And we also said goodbye to Kevin Bacon / Jack and Marcy. So we are down 3 characters in this chunk.
Yeah, we're not many people left.
And we can remove Steve Christie from the list of suspects. So he's cleared.
The busboy, however, is not cleared.
The busboy, however, is still the primary suspect. So thanks again for joining us. And I'm Greg.
And I'm Brian. And until next time, you're all
You're all
doomed.
doomed.